Hi, in this video we're going to review a few different concepts for the local upgrade of the Pennsylvania CareerZone. First thing we're going to cover is how to set up students in the system to take an individual assessment or a set of assessments. We're then going to review which assessments are recommended for the 9th grade level. From there, we're going to talk about how to go over the results with students, and then we'll talk about administrator access and how they navigate the site. So first things first, let's talk about setting up your students. One of the very first things you're going to want to do with the Pennsylvania CareerZone upgrade is make sure that your students are going to the right URL. So in this case, I've gone to local.pacareerzone.org because that's my demo site, but your URL may be different. So for instance, if you're one of our subscribing districts like Penn Trafford, you'll type in penntrafford.pacareerzone.org, hit enter, and you'll go to your deployment of the Pennsylvania CareerZone. This is particularly important for students, that they go to your URL of the Pennsylvania CareerZone, not the general URL, which is the pacareerzone.org. So once you've done that, let's see what the student will find when they arrive at the site. I'm going to log out, only to log back in, and students in this particular deployment will find a button that says Sign In with Google. They're going to click Sign In with Google, and then they're going to use their Penn Trafford email account to sign in. It's a little different for me because I'm with Headed2, the company that powers the system, so I use my Headed2 account to log in. But for students or administrators, they're going to use the domains that are approved by Penn Trafford to log in to the system. Okay, so now that the student has logged in, they'll fill in some registration information and they'll be taken then to their Career Hub. This page is really their home base inside of the system. It's going to have some information on them. It's also going to have the lesson plans that they've been assigned. They're going to have a schedule if one has been uploaded by the school, and also over time they're going to have some suggestions from the system that are inspired by their exploration within the system. Those suggestions might include different assessments they might take. It might include occupations they should explore. It might include educational opportunities they might want to consider. So pretty much anything can be inside the Inspired by Our Exploration section, that so long as it's aligned with the activity and the interests that the student has expressed inside the system. Okay, so this is their Career Hub, and just to go back over a few basics with the Career Hub, this is also where students are going to save all their files. So if a student has a career-related file and they want to upload it, they click on Manage All Files. They choose a file from their desktop. Once they've selected that, they upload it, and then it's saved inside the system. Now, as an administrator, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the video, you can then add a tag to a file that's been uploaded by a student. So the student's not adding this tag, the teacher is on their behalf. They might add the tag grade 8 evidence as an example, or grade 9 evidence. Once that tag has been added, the student can no longer delete the file. The file can't be deleted, it'll be saved. And if you then later want to delete the file, you're going to delete the tag first and then delete the file. Okay, so that's file management. The system's also going to save some other things, journals that have been created by the student, recently liked items, and then local opportunities if any of those apply for the student. But we're not going to go through all of that in this particular video, because what we're going to focus is that you've got a new class of students that are coming in that you want to introduce the system to, and you want to get them to complete an assessment. So in this video, we're going to use a 9th grade class as an example. And we're going to imagine that we're trying to figure out an assessment or pair of assessments to assign, just to introduce them to the system and get their feet wet in terms of what we're trying to do. So the first thing you're going to ask them to do is go to the home page of your deployment. And when you go to the home page of your deployment, you're going to have them all select Discover Possibilities, which is the first main bucket on the screen. On this page, you will see two of our most popular self-assessments, Budget Your Life and Interest Profiler. Both of those are great places to start with a new class of students. And it really depends on the teacher in terms of what they want to lead with and how they want to sort of introduce the concept of career development, career literacy, and career exploration. We're going to recommend in this video that you start with the Interest Profiler. And when you click Interest Profiler, you're going to click Go to start a new Interest Profiler. I'm going to click continue since I've already started one. And you're going to probably with your students want to do the 30 question assessment. Just because the 60 is slightly longer, the 30 will go by pretty quickly and give them an idea of what's going on. When they click on 30 question mini assessment, they'll read some instructions. Once they've finished the instructions, they'll dive into the actual activity. This is a very basic activity. It's going to present a number of tasks and ask the students to respond to those tasks with a reaction. Is this task, like building kitchen cabinets, something I would never want to do or something I'd actually kind of like to do? And as they go through, they'll answer questions just like that. And in the end, they'll be given an output that will suggest a number of occupations that align to their interests as expressed through this particular assessment. All right, so that's the interest profiler. And let me sort of speed through these responses, and we'll cut ahead in a moment so you can see what the output looks like. Okay, so here we are on the last page. We've answered our last question about keeping inventory records, and I'm now going to click Summarize to see the occupations that are right for me. Now, the very first thing the student's going to see is a summary of their interest areas in order of importance. And these particular parameters, social, artistic, enterprising, realistic, conventional, investigative, these align to the Holland Codes framework for personal interests. And if you hover over them, you'll get a little description of what each one means. So for me, if it says social, it says social occupations frequently involve working with, communicating with, and teaching people. These occupations often involve helping or providing service to others, so on and so forth. So I'm going to get kind of a score in terms of my personality profile, and from there I click on View Occupations, and I'm going to see a list of occupations that align to my particular interests. You'll see the occupations turn orange because that is an output from this interest profiler. That's why they're orange now. And if you see a little target, that means the occupation is a high priority occupation. And if you see a piggy bank, that means the student's actually already done a budget in the system, and that occupation would give them enough of a salary to match the lifestyle budget that they've created. So I'm just explaining a little bit of what you're seeing on the screen here. Now, what I'd encourage you to do is, sometimes a student's going to do an interest profiler, and maybe they don't see the occupation they had in mind for themselves at the very top of the screen. I would tell them not to be too discouraged by that. This is just guidance. It's just something to put them sort of on the right path for the kinds of occupations they might want to explore. So it's really intended to expand their field of consideration rather than to limit it. Okay, so that is the interest profiler. Now, an alternative approach into the Pennsylvania Career Zone for a 9th grader would be to look at the budget tool. I'm going to click on Discover Possibilities again, and I'm going to go to Budget Your Life. Inside of Budget Your Life, have the students select Choose Your Lifestyle, and this is where they'll budget how much money they'll need to support the lifestyle that they wish to live. All right, so I'm going to select a particular county inside of Pennsylvania, and now that's going to pull in the cost of living data for that county. And I'm going to start to answer questions as a student about my plans for later on in life. Do I intend to live with my parents, family, or friends, rent an apartment, buy a place of my own, etc.? And that's going to then give me a cost, a monthly cost, that will begin to create my budget. So if I click rent an apartment, it's going to give me a number. Now, if I know, for instance, that number is maybe too low, I might put in a more accurate number for for the apartments I might consider. And then I continue and move on, and I select other items that are going to be important to me. Okay, I'm not going to actually do home telephone, but I am going to do internet and mobile phone. Definitely going to need gas, electric, water, and trash pickup. I expect I'll have to pay for that. And I click and I move on, etc. So I'm going to cut ahead in the video to show you the output. So before I show the summary of my monthly budget, I'm going to point out that you can have students add a new expense. So we've got in the system a number of categories that they're answering questions about, but there's definitely some categories that maybe aren't in there that should be in there. And so one example might be a pet ownership. So if you've got a dog or a cat, you might know that that's going to cost you, $75 a month, and say my dog is expensive. And so there we go. I'm able to add a new expense to my budget that wasn't in any of the sort of prefabricated fields inside of the lifestyle budget. And this can be a great teaching moment for an educator to sort of point to a couple of things. One is that you have to be very expansive in your thinking about what's going to be in your budget. Try your best not to forget anything. You may want to create a miscellaneous bucket to capture expenses that you're not necessarily intending or expecting. And your budget should always be fluid and able to accept new inputs as life evolves and you learn new things about where you actually spend money. Okay, so now that I've done this, I'm going to click Show Summary, and it's going to give me my monthly spending. And now, when I go to View Occupations, I have a minimum annual salary that I need to make to meet my expenses. And that's now been preset in the filter. So I've got a minimum here of $27,800. All right. And now I'm able to look at occupations, every occupation now in the system that will pay me at least that. Okay, so that's the budget tool. And the reason we do this budget tool is because for many kids, especially at grade 9 or the younger levels, they may not know exactly what they want to do, but they've got a pretty decent idea of how they might want to live. And the lifestyle budget tool allows them to really start there. Start with how they want to live, and then give them a bunch of occupations that would satisfy those requirements for the student. All right, so that brings an end to the module here on how to introduce the system to younger students. Now let's talk about you as an administrator and the access that you have, and then how to, say, review the results of an assessment with a student. Now, as an administrator, when you sign in, you're going to see a fourth option here, this Manage tab. And in another video that I'm going to share a link to, we'll talk about what you see on the screen and how to get managerial access if you don't currently have it. And we're also going to talk in another video about assigning lessons, etc. But in this video, where I want to focus is specifically if you want to review the results of an assessment with an individual student, or actually see what a classroom of students is doing. So let's go to Manage and then click on Manage Users. This is probably going to be one of your favorite pages inside of the Pennsylvania CareerZone upgrade as a teacher or an administrator. And to give you my example, I'm going to actually go to my demo site. This is called local.pacareerzone.org, and I'm going to go to Manage Users here. Just because I have more students here to be able to show you. Okay, so I've got all of my students listed in this case. And if I want to narrow down my list to just a subgroup, I can do that. I've already created a group called the Blue Group, and that's going to narrow down my list to 3 students. And if I want to run a report on those 3 students, say I want to see how they did with their interest profiler, I could click Interest Profile Report, and this is going to show me the results of those 3 students. 2 out of the 3 have not even done their interest profiler, 1 has, and this gives you the different parameters of their different scores, the clusters that they've looked at, the top occupations, etc. That's somewhat helpful, but it's really about showing you that the activity has been completed more than anything else. But let's talk about that student who did actually do the interest profiler, and say we're working with Sid. Now, if we want to see details of their particular output, we're going to click the gray document and then click on View Profile Report. And now we're going to see a little more detail. In the interest profiler, what their scores were. In their work importance profiler, what their scores were. What the occupational matches were. If we want to review that with them, we can look at that. And then as we scroll down, we're going to see even more information. Flagged items, occupations that they showed an interest in. We can look at the career plans that they've begun, or the lesson plans that they've made progress against. We can also look at their journals. This is an output of their budget. So if they've done the budget tool, we get to see what they did there. And then also we're able to see the files that they've saved inside the system. So that's a really important place, and I'll show you how to get there again. So we'll close it out. We look at the individual student. We click the gray document icon. We click View Profile Report, and that pulls up all the very detailed information about what the student has done inside the system. So if you're working with a student, this is often a great place to start. And if we're working with that 9th grade student who only did the interest profiler and the budget tool, we can deselect some of these things just to sort of take some of the noise out, and then actually look at just the outputs for those 2 activities, just to make it a little easier to see. And if we want to, we can save that report to the student's files, just so we have it for later, or we can print it as a PDF. All right, so like I said, in another video, we'll talk in depth about the lesson plans that you'll find inside the system and how to assign them. And then we'll also get into more detail about reporting. But for the time being, know that if you're running a report on a group